Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex. My co-host Anthony Rivardo. Today we're talking polarizing New York Giants football because the playoffs are obviously coming up. The Giants have a chance to make it. But if they don't make it, there's a scenario where they can land the third overall pick. And, I'm kind of tired of being a top 10 overall pick team. You have 3 consecutive seasons with a top 6 pick, and the Giants really haven't gotten that much better. Thanks, Dave Gettleman. Thank you so much for doing this team. The whole 2018 draft, there's a lot of players that really aren't even making an impact from 2 years ago, let alone last year. So this is the first year where we've actually seen the draft picks, especially the rookies, make an impact. And it's fun to see some growth, and it's mainly because of the coaching staff. But we want to dive into those scenarios, the polarizing sides of it. How do the Giants end up with a third overall pick, and what scenario do they make the playoffs? But before we dive into that, Anthony, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. It was a tough loss yesterday. We obviously recapped that after the game and posted video on that, so go check that out if you haven't seen that already. But now I'm looking ahead towards next week. We have a really crucial Week 17 matchup. We're playing for the playoffs. We kind of control our own destiny, but we do need a little bit of help, right? So, if we make the playoffs, that would be amazing. But if we don't make the playoffs, we also are in pretty good shape in terms of draft positioning. We're in a really, really cool scenario here that's very rare where, the team, we're playing in the NFC East. Of course, the NFC East is terrible, so a 6-win team is very likely to make the playoffs this year. So the Giants can make the playoffs, which is what you play football for. We all want to see that. We all want to see the Giants get in to the playoffs finally for the first time since 2016. But also, if you don't make the playoffs, usually as a fan, what you want is the highest draft pick possible. And the Giants have an opportunity to get one or the other. They have the possibility of getting the third overall pick, a top 3 pick, and then landing a generational talent in the draft, or making the playoffs and competing for the grand prize of making it to the Super Bowl, which, it's the best of both worlds. I think it's pretty cool and kind of amazing. And, it's going to take a lot of help on both sides, but both scenarios are completely possible, and it's really a rare occurrence.
Only in 2020, man. Only in 2020 would we see the Giants at 5 wins right now, possibly 6 wins. That's what we hope. At 6 wins, make the playoffs. But at the same time, they could also, if they lose to Dallas, who has a very, very effective and productive offense, despite not having Dak Prescott.
Dallas has been playing very well.
Very well. So this is looking like a tough game for the Giants, no matter how you look at it. And really, I do think they control their own destiny because think about Washington right now. Alex Smith is out. They just cut Dwayne Haskins for going to strip clubs. That's one way to get off a team. But
I believe Alex Smith is going to be playing next week, though.
Oh, is he playing? Okay, so
yeah, they said he probably will, which could spell trouble for the Giants. But
it could.
We'll see.
Again, this really comes down
to... It's Washington. I expect them to choke.
That's, of course. And Alex Smith, I think, is still a little bit injured. He's not going to be 100%. And he hasn't been the best quarterback there. He's had some decent performances, and other times he's disappeared. So I don't expect him to be, an all-pro caliber player, maybe average against the Eagles, who have been actually doing pretty well offensively. They kept up with Dallas this past weekend. They almost won, which would have ended our playoff hopes. But I think the Giants really do control their own destiny here because if they beat Dallas, chances are Washington will lose to the Eagles, and we'll be in the playoffs. And it'll be a very strange scenario because I have to say I'm not the proudest fan to be a playoff team in 6-10, but I guess I'll take it. I'm always going to take a playoff appearance over a draft pick because, as we've seen the past 3 years, top 6 picks in every single draft since Dave Gettleman's been here, we still aren't even considered an average team yet.
Point.
So this is the reality of our team. I don't trust us with the top 6 pick. Even at, let's say, the third, they get the best case scenario. We have the third overall pick. I don't even trust this team to make it work, to actually get that selection, make that pick, and turn it into more players. Because Dave Gettleman's never traded back in a draft. And if you have the third overall pick, you have your choice of trade backs. You can trade back to 5, 6, 7 and still land Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell, any of these fantastic generational talents. And you do it, man. You get the extra draft capital. You wait until the second round. You get a cornerback. You get a linebacker. You get a pass rusher, whatever you got to do. And this is the reality of what the Giants are facing right now is that there's either playoffs for a 6-10 team that will probably get washed in the first round, but it'll be fun to watch a playoff game, a meaningful game in January. Or, alternatively, you end up with a top 10 pick as high as a third overall pick. So, that's crazy. But Anthony, I want you to run down how exactly, this would happen. If for the third pick, for them to actually get this, what needs to happen for that?
Yeah, in order for the Giants to get the third overall pick, they would obviously have to lose this week, and that would spell no playoffs. And then we need Houston to beat the Tennessee Titans, which is really difficult. You know, Houston is not very good. Tennessee is definitely a playoff team. They're at least competing for a playoff spot. They're a good team with a great rushing attack. But I do think that's possible. It's a divisional game, so you never know what happens, right? So Houston has to beat Tennessee. Atlanta has to beat Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers just clinched a playoff spot with a dominant victory over the Lions, and I believe they can't really move up in the standings in terms of which seed they're in. So that means that Tom Brady and a few of those other stars on Tampa Bay's offense and defense really will probably be resting next week. So Atlanta, who just went toe-to-toe and down to the wire with the Kansas City Chiefs, actually has a solid chance of beating Tampa Bay next week. And then Cincinnati beating Baltimore is another long shot, but Cincinnati did beat the Steelers a couple weeks ago, who were 11-1 at the time, right? And they did beat the Texans this week. So Cincinnati's playing pretty well right now. So maybe they'll beat Baltimore again, another divisional game. You never know, but very unlikely. And then, of course, we need Philadelphia to beat Washington, which we need anyway if we're hoping to make the playoffs, which we all are. We need Philadelphia to beat Washington in both scenarios. So, unfortunately for this week, I'm going to have to say go Eagles, even though, as Alex knows and as many of you know, there's nothing I hate more on this earth than the Eagles. But this week, I guess, unfortunately, I have to love them and root for them. So that's going to be tough, but I'll do it. And then Detroit has to beat Minnesota is the final thing that we need, which is very, that's plausible. It's another divisional game. Detroit, I think, has 5 wins. Minnesota has 6 wins, so very possible that Detroit wins that game. So those are the scenarios that have to happen. That's the requirements to get the third overall pick. If any of those things don't happen, then we'll be picking somewhere between 4 and 17, depending if the Giants make the playoffs or not. So, a very cool little situation that we're in here. I think a lot of those matchups, I think they could break our way. If worse comes to worse and we don't make the playoffs, I think a lot of those things could happen. A couple of them would be some upset victories, but it's possible in Week 17, especially when teams are fighting for the playoffs. Sometimes they just choke monumentally. Sometimes they rest their starters, it's possible. So that would be cool. Third overall pick or 17th pick. It's a pipe dream. But it's
this
possible.
Sounds like a doomsday ultimatum. Every year there's that one article that comes out. It's like July 1st. There's gonna be a meteor that hits, and this is like for the Giants. January whatever. Honestly, after this upcoming weekend, it's gonna be like either the Giants have the 17th overall pick, or they have the 3rd overall pick. Like, what do you prefer? What do you, and a lot of fans I see on social media are saying, we want the draft pick. We want the better player. This team is not a playoff caliber team. They don't deserve to be in the playoffs. I understand the logic. I also agree they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. They're a bad team that are getting extremely lucky in a historically bad NFC East, right? That's the reality. Like, they are getting extremely lucky right now. They do not deserve to be in the playoffs. However, as a fan, I always want to see meaningful football in January because the reality is you never know. You never know what could happen. They could win a game, and I think the probability is looking like they could face off against Seattle again. So we know that the Giants can beat them. We know this.
We can do that.
We can do that. We know that they can beat them. The problem here is they're actually taking steps back since beating them. That's my big concern. The last 3 weeks have been extremely disheartening, just with the DJ injuries. Everything in between, really. It's not good. The defenses look spotty, and there's injuries there. I think Blake Martinez missed some snaps. Darnay Holmes was not 100%. Xavier McKinney is having his rookie hiccups, which a lot of those rookies actually had earlier on in the season. And obviously the injuries. Lorenzo Carter being out, Ocean Ximenez. These are really, really tough things to bounce back from. So the Giants have a pretty tall task, a big hill to climb if they're going to make the playoffs and actually win in the playoffs. But, I get the perspective of fans saying, I think, maybe we just take the draft capital here, the higher pick, and move on to another, live another day and not be embarrassed in the playoffs, because the reality is we're not going to go very far. That's just, obviously I want to be the optimist and everything and say maybe we win a game, whatnot, but we're not winning the Super Bowl with this team. It's clear as day. We don't have any wide receivers. Jason Garrett is...
Never say never, man. Never say never.
Look,
if we make it to the playoffs, you never know what happens, dude.
You never know what happens. You never know what happens. But when you've scored 2 single-digit games in the last
No,
three
I know,
games.
I get that.
Not good. When you've scored over 20 points just 4 times in 11 games, or actually, sorry, 15 games this year, you've scored over 20 points 4 times. You're not winning any playoff games against teams that score average over 25, 30 points a game. You're just not doing it. You know, these teams, we saw Baltimore, they beat us at will. You know, Baker Mayfield and the Browns, the Jets just beat them. I know a lot of the receivers were out, but the reality is the Jets scored more points on their defense. You know, like, we are a vastly inexperienced team with a lot of inconsistencies. And, you know, I still believe in Joe Judge 100%. But at a certain point, you know, teams start to figure you out when your offense can't stay on the field. You know, that's the reality. So, you know, bouncing back to the topic at hand, what do you do, Anthony? Like, what do you do? Let's start with the playoff scenario. The Giants have the 17th overall pick because they lose in the first round and they have the worst record. What do you do there? What position are you addressing? You know, are you still going wide receiver? Maybe Jalen Waddle still there? Are you going pass rusher? Maybe Gregory Rousseau? Highly doubtful he falls that fall. But, you know, what are you looking for? What do you do? You know, after you kind of have to pass on all those really good players.
If we make the playoffs, I think we're picking number 32. Man, if we make it into the playoffs, if that miracle happens, what's to say that, you know, 4 more miracles can't happen and we can't win the Super Bowl? But no, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Listen, I'm a hopeful fan. All I want to see, dude, is the Giants winning a Super Bowl. You know, like, that's the only thing that I want. And if it were to happen, obviously I'd be over the moon, and who cares about a draft pick at that point, right? But no, I get what you're saying. And in terms of making the playoffs, though, over these last 3 games, right, this 3-game losing streak, the offense has been the big problem, as it has been for much of the season. It's been very bad these past 3 games in particular, and that's concerning when you look at this Week 17 matchup that we have, because we're going up against the Cowboys, whose offense has actually been really good over the past 3 weeks. They just won 37-17 against Philadelphia. The week before that, they dropped 41 points on San Francisco, and the week before that, they topped 30 points off on the Bengals. So this is an offense that's going to be hard to contain, and the Giants' offense is going to have to step up to the plate and actually put some points on the board if they want to compete. You know, when we lost to Dallas earlier this season, it was a score of 37-34. You know, that was the only time this entire season that we topped 30 points. And that's the key. Can we do that again? Because we're going to probably need to, you know? Like, Dallas is going to move the football. They're going to get the ball in the end zone. Even though we have a great defense, our offense actually needs to step up to the plate and match that from the Dallas Cowboys. And we need to put some points on the board. So that's the key here in order to make the playoffs. But furthermore, once we get to the playoffs, we absolutely need to score more points as well. You know, this offense is not sustainable. So let's say, to answer your question, we make the playoffs, the offense doesn't succeed, and we get bumped in the first round, right? And then we're picking 17th overall. Well, then I think, you know, you mentioned Jalen Waddle. I think he'll probably go before the 17th pick. I don't even think he goes that far. I think in terms of, you know, our biggest weaknesses on this roster, the cornerback position is one that when you look at mock drafts this year, you see the best corners going in that 17 to 25 range. You know, Patrick Surtain is going close to the top 10, but I think that you can probably land a really solid cornerback at the 17th overall pick. So that's probably what I would look to target.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable. And, you know, I want to date back a little bit. And it's also important to mention that Kyler Fackrell, you know, one of our really only outside linebackers, will probably be returning next week. So that's a huge bonus for us. I think Devonta Freeman will also be available, so he'll probably eat into some of Alfred Morris's snaps, but we'll see how that goes. You know, I'm looking back at the Giants' first game against Dallas, right? They lost, obviously, 37-34. But this game was very funky. Very, very funky. We're talking about Kyler Fackrell 46-yard interception return. So right off the bat, you have 7 points that the defense got for you. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 field goals. And let me tell you this. All of these field goals were ridiculous. Graham Gano hits a 55-yard field goal, a 50-yard field goal, a 54-yard field goal, and a 28-yard field goal. If he doesn't make those field goals, the Giants are blown out in this game. And they really just scored at the end, you know, with Devonta Freeman, 4-yard rush. They only scored 2 offensive touchdowns with Evan Ingram and Devonta Freeman. The rest was field goals and then Kyler Fackrell's interception return. So the reality is the Giants got outscored by a lot in this game. Their defense kept them in it, even though they allowed 37 points. And Graham Gano really just kept them alive. So
yeah, and remember how we lost that game? It was on a ridiculous field goal. Like, they just threw up a Hail Mary to Michael Gallup or something, and he catches the ball and puts him in field goal range. Like, that was nuts. You know, that was a game that we should have won.
Lewis.
And if we did win that game, you know, we're having a completely different conversation about what are we going to do in the playoffs, you know?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You know, what do you do in the playoffs? How do you win a game in the playoffs? Because it seems to me we just played 3 winning teams in Arizona, Cleveland, and and the Baltimore. And Joe Judge basically said to his coaching staff, "We're not winning these games unless we're excessively aggressive. You know, unless we go for it on fourth downs, take shots downfield, be as aggressive as possible. Because the reality is, the Giants aren't winning unless they are taking risks and getting lucky. That's the thing. Their entire game plan right now is revolving around getting lucky a couple times and just squeaking out wins. That is not a recipe for success. But Joe Judge understands it, and we can see it very blatantly that they're playing the luck game. You know, they're playing the big shot. Maybe we get lucky. You know, get some hope up and get the energy rising. But the reality is the Giants are not overpowering anybody. They're getting lucky to get wins right now, and it hasn't worked the last 3 weeks as we've seen. And if we make the playoffs, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same thing. Hope for a bit of luck. Hope that Russell Wilson has a terrible game, and our defense saves our ass, because the reality is the offense isn't doing jack crap. And that's it, man. Luck is our best friend right now. So if they make the playoffs, man, it'll be a big surprise to me. I'll enjoy it. I'll enjoy the January games. But at the same time, if we lose, we have a big draft pick, and I don't want Dave Gettleman here to make that selection, because he, like you've said in the past, he gets hyper focused on specific players, and he doesn't deviate.
He falls in love with prospects, and then he falls
in love with prospects. That's right. Yeah. And he doesn't trade back. He doesn't add value. He actually ends up trading away picks more often than not.
Yes.
Like DeAndre Baker and Leonard Williams, he trades away picks to get players, and both of those players, DeAndre Baker isn't even on the team anymore, and Leonard Williams
is a player that he fell in love with.
It's a player he fell in love with, and he was, he had some red flags. They were clear. And then you look at Leonard Williams, and while he's played well, he disappears on occasion. And I'm not sure he deserves a big $18 million plus contract this year, because if he's not making an influence like Aaron Donald and Chris Jones and these big names, I'm not paying him the same amount of money as them. That's the reality. I'm not overpaying for a guy that disappears. And look, replacing his production is going to be tough if they let him go. It's going to be tough. But that's money that you can reallocate elsewhere, maybe towards an edge rusher or a wide receiver one. If you can put up more points, and this is the way the league is going, this is an outscoring league at the moment. If you can outscore your opponent, you're going to win. And the Giants simply can't do that. At the very least, you should be able to outscore your opponent if your defense isn't performing well. And the Giants can't do that, and that's what's killing them.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. The Giants can't outscore anybody this season, really. It's been so rare that they actually put points on the board. Like I said, they've only put up 30 points once this season. So, heading into the playoffs, if we do make it there, in fact, we need to learn to outscore people. Like, something has to click, either the offensive scheme needs to just dramatically improve, or Daniel Jones just needs to start playing elite football and start playing out of his mind, or the wide receivers just need to start breaking ankles on every route that they run. I don't know. Maybe, Wayne Gallman has to turn into the next Derrick Henry. Like, we need something dramatic to happen in order to find success in the playoffs. Like, when you look at these teams, even if you take Seattle, right? Like, that was a very close defensive game, low scoring, right, that we won. And so what if, we played Seattle in the first round and that happened again and we won. But then you move on, who would we be playing? We would be playing the Saints or the Packers or a team like that. That's a high-scoring team. You got to outscore that team. You're not just going to shut them down on offense. Like, that is a team that has, both of those teams are teams that have the capability of scoring 6 to 7 touchdowns in a single game. They can get 3 touchdowns in the first quarter and then you're just done, right? That's what those teams are. So you have to match that offense to their offense, and you got to start playing better football on offense. The Giants do. So hopefully, we can see some progress in Week 17 against the Cowboys, who don't really have a good defense at all. Maybe we could see the offense start to click and play better next week, and then carry that momentum going into the playoffs. Hopefully, if we make it, that's really what we need to see. So next week is a true first step towards building this offense in a matter of weeks and setting ourselves up for success in playoff football.
Right, that's right. If we do make the playoffs, before we wrap up this video, If we make the playoffs, there's a few things that we need to do. One is run the football heavily, and two is you need to get your receivers open somehow, some
And
way.
turnover-free football.
Turnover-free football. And here's the thing. I actually think DJ played a really good second half of the Baltimore game. I watched the
agree.
film. I clipped all of it. You can watch it on the YouTube channel, later today. It's going to be there. And I watched all the offensive film. And I can tell you one thing. The offensive line did okay, but they really put him under pressure a lot. And he made some nasty throws in the second half, like very good throws. The first half was not so good, but that's the progress and the momentum that you want to see with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is a very momentum-based quarterback. He plays off his good performances, his good throws. He makes a good throw, one play, and you see it build. It compounds for him. And I think we saw a little bit of that in the second half. And I think, that is what we should expect to see next week against Dallas. I think he actually will play a decent game. He didn't turn the ball over. He actually held onto the ball pretty well. There was a string where he was sacked 3 consecutive times thanks to Matt Parrott. I know Matt Parrott's your guy, but man, he looked terrible. It was really bad. I'll show
Listen,
you.
I just want to throw this out here real quickly about Matt Parrott, though. I see a lot of Giants fans getting really frustrated and absolutely tearing him to shreds. You're all forgetting, yes, he had COVID and he's a third-round pick. Like, give him some time. There's a reason he's not starting. We all wanted to see him start. We don't have that insider information. I don't know how his COVID battle went. He might have been very symptomatic. He might still be dealing with some issues in terms of his body because of that. So, yeah, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and just say, next year, be better. He doesn't have to be better immediately because he's not the starter. He had a few bad reps, okay? So what, Like, we weren't going to win that game anyway just because he let up a few sacks. Like, it wasn't going to change everything. So, I don't know, just take it easy on Matt Parrott right now. The dude just had a battle with COVID, and I'm sure that's still affecting his body. Plus, he was the 99th overall pick in the NFL draft. Like, he's expected to make some mistakes and not be a great player instantly. And he's shown us in the past that he has the tools to be really good, and he's flashed really solid performances. So, I'm not really my confidence isn't wavered that much by that bad performance.
Yeah. No, me neither. Also, it's fair to mention that he had his offensive line coach changed in the middle of the season.
That's another good point.
And then he got COVID right after that, so he really missed a ton of new fundamentals, new this, new that.
Yeah.
It was really just a bad string of events for him. So I'm not looking at him and saying, he's a bad player or anything. I'm just saying,
Right, but a lot of fans are.
Right, okay, yeah, but that's very premature. I would not jump to that conclusion, Give him more time. He's, like you said, all the factors we just listed, very important to note. Again, though, Daniel Jones didn't really have much help at times, and I liked how he responded nonetheless. I think he did a good job holding onto the football. He didn't fumble at all, and I think that was a major progression for him. That was a big positive from the game.
Definitely.
But, I think that when we're looking at him in the playoffs, like you mentioned before, the wide receiver needs to step up and play. I think Sterling Shepard looked phenomenal. Finally, Jason Garrett figured out how to use him a little bit. They, manned him up, got him open a couple times. Also, Dante Pettis, he looks fast, spry, agile. I love to see him more in the near future against Dallas. I want to see him push the field. He's fast, man. He's got some speed to him. He actually looks like he's slimmed down a lot from his time in San Francisco. That was one of the big cons for him going into the season. He was overweight. He wasn't fast, but he looks like he slimmed down. He looks good. I loved his routes. He had a really nice seam route that DJ connected with him on a 20-yard pass. That was beautiful. He had a crossing route that DJ rolled out to the left side and slung it across his body, right on the money to him on the sideline. That was great. Great awareness from Dante Pettis to get his feet in bounds. I thought they looked good. The chemistry was there, and I think I would love to see him start a little bit more, get some more reps over Austin Mack, over CJ Board, and maybe even over Darius Slayton, because Darius Slayton's looked really bad the last couple of weeks. I wouldn't be opposed to, taking Slayton's role down, putting Dante Pettis where he actually usually plays, and then Golden Tate comes back next week, maybe, depending on how his calf responds to treatment this week. We'll see what happens there. But there's some moving pieces. There's some opportunity for the Giants here. There's some things that they can do to shake things up. They're going to get Devonta Freeman back, hopefully. The defense will hopefully get a little bit more with Kyler Fackrell, but some injured guys coming back should give them a little bit of a boost. That's all we can hope for now. But Anthony, do you want to add any last remarks before we close out?
I mean, really, just let's go Giants. I'm so excited that we're actually playing a meaningful Week 17 game. It's been so long since we've had that, and I'm really excited for it, and I'm excited to share this experience with Fireside Giants, with Giants Nation in general, with all of you guys, and I'm just, really hopeful that we win that game and that Philadelphia is able to win theirs, and we can make the playoffs, because that would just be amazing to see the Giants play playoff football for the first time since 2016. That would be incredible. So really, only thing I have to say is let's go Giants. Unfortunately, I have to say this. Let's go Eagles, and let's hope to see some playoff football this year.
Yep, absolutely. And I just want to add one thing about Dante Pettis because I remembered something he did that really got me excited was he actually, once DJ broke out of the pocket, he ran a second route. We see our receivers kind of just stand there and give up after DJ rolls out of the pocket. A lot of times they just slow up and don't do anything. Dante Pettis actually spun his cornerback around and shot towards the sidelines, on an out route essentially. And it was great. Love to see those guys making the second effort to help your quarterback out. It was really fun to watch. And as always, my friends, thank you so much for the support. This is a great community. We're seeing insane growth over the past couple of weeks and months on Twitter, on social media, and YouTube, of course. And the comments, please keep dropping comments on the YouTube. I respond to all of them. Community posts and everything. We're trying to get more engaged there. So, we love your support over on that platform. And as always, go Giants, and we will catch you on the next episode.
TVSO.